Welcome back. Welcome back, y'all. Y'all check this out. We're back away. Went on a trip to visit my brother in Freeport. Got a surprise that I saw my nieces and my nephew. My younger brother's kids were here. That was to my surprise. Did not know that. That was a shocker for me. Really awesome. Really surprised about that. Very significantly important to try to be involved and try to get more involved and figure out ways to be more involved. But first time in a long time to be connected and to reach out and reach in. It's a lot to talk about this weekend, just this week, stuff that's happening, that's still happening, and we got the book launch. So listen, you're here listening to Love and Worship with yours truly, Kingsley Kase. Hit me back after this break. One, two. So is my mic on? My mic is on? All right. So welcome back to the Love and Worship podcast with your host, Kingsley Kase. That's me. And today we're talking about my trip to Freeport, being in Grand Bahama, missing Grand Bahama. Haven't been back here for so many years, and it's really good to be back. And to my surprise, because usually I would go over to the Forbes house, my sister-in-law's family. But I guess it was assumption that they wouldn't have been there or whatever the case would be. But I saw our aunt out or sister out, and she quickly informed me that they were there. So to my surprise, it was a really shocker to me, that my nieces and nephews were here. And then I got to spend time with my brother, and sister-in-law, and the girls are here. Ivan Jr. is away, still abroad with wife and kid. And I know he's like rallying it up right now. And so I'm just so proud of them. I know they've all been through so much, and just seeing the mercies of God. And today, history was made. This weekend, history was made not just once, but multiple times. In the National Convention, history was made. Just the significance of what would have transpired in that time period. Some things happen, information of resignations being handed in or whatever. But right in the midst of that, God just saw fit to plant a seed, just plant a seed and allowed others to move into position. And I can't really describe what that's like, to live in rebellion, knowing that that you're living on limited time, because we all are. We're all living on borrowed time. And I always had the perspective that to be in a position, in a state of mind state to just, if you're bowing out gracefully, retire, but if you're being handed, a gold mine in camouflage clothing, it looks like it's wrapped up, looks like it's garbage or trash, or it doesn't mean anything. Listen, I moved back home. I moved back to one of the places where I said I would never ask some of my schoolmates that went to Iron Miss, I would say 90% of them, once they left during the time period I left or after the time period I left, none of them have been back home. Um, and it's not because of what's happening now, really. It's really because of what they left with and what we left with. That, the stains, that scars or the bruises or whatever the case that we got from it, the things or whatever. But now that we're all grown, and we know what we know now, and we're in a position to help others and propel others, honestly, if it's not passed on the knowledge that we have to the generations after us, or we're not able to do what we need to do in their lives, then that's on us. That's just like me. Like, I know that I can get back any amount of years that I didn't spend in the lives of my nieces and nephews on all of my family side, my sister's side, my brother's Glenn side, who's in the States, my younger brother's side, my brother Ivan, my brother Antonio. So I know for 1,000% sure that if I'm gonna make a tremendous impact, that whatever acts that I need to get together for sustainable future, and moving forward and making right decisions and right choices and impacting lives, I need to make those moves now. I need to make those moves now. I need to be conscious of how I make those moves now and why I make those moves. But I'm proud of my brother Ivan, associate pastor Charles now. I'm so proud of the fact that he was able to claim that blessing, that the Lord provided for him. Like, it wasn't something that he chased, wasn't something that, he rushed in or anything like that. This really just happened of him just being willing to be in alignment, willing to render his services to God and to fully connect to the word that's rapidly, raptured his life from any sort of pit and trapped that was try to figure out a way to sentence him to pain and misery. And he came back and finally got grounded into the Holy Ghost and the Holy Spirit. And he always had that connection to God and that tap in. And some people definitely have that tap in from younger years. But when you have promise in your life, when the goodness of God comes back to you, it's almost like when Joseph, while in prison, praying the prayer of remembrance, remember me, God, and then saying it to the cupbearer, remember me, speak about me, tell them about me. And years went by, but the cupbearer still had an opportunity to remember, and God just allowed the opportunity to come right in place and put people right in position. And sometimes it may not be in our generation, but it'll be in another generation, and what the goodness of God can do. And the gospel of Jesus Christ is not meant for it to be a selfish thing where we hold it and keep it to ourselves and we clench to it like a fist and don't release it so that all can find that beautiful relationship and that joy that we have and that peace that we have. It's something that you share, something that you give away. And so that's why the wealth of the fellowship in those years passed on, and it kept on passing on because it was the foundational principle of how we facilitated and took care of our own. And not just then, but it still happens now, maybe differently because of so many systems being in place. But I'm just really proud that God allowed this to happen. My father It's alive to see it. My mom is alive to see it. Um, you know, my Grammy just missed it by a hair. But she knew it was coming. There's so much stuff, so much wisdom to hear. Um, you know, so many persons in the room that we still have wealth and knowledge that we can tap from, and just a wealth of knowledge. And to see that people are now doing documentaries about leaders who are retiring and stepping away from ministries and treating it, giving us like a history check. And now you could go online and watch documentaries about our people here in the Bahamas on the Church of God of Prophecy side, and talking about the history and talking about their journey, talking about their band days. It's just so much that is there that we're now, it's not going to be lost, basically, because it's not like the Library of Alexandria of how much, well, what they wanted us to believe that they lost, I would say. That one is still out there. I think ultimately, when you think about it, history, if history would have changed that day, but God just had it so that the word and the principles of the word, regardless of however it was restructured or however it was placed in the book, the principles of the word, the meaning, where they derive from, the foundational principles alone leads you to a place where you can tap into God. And my hope is that we'll all discover more of that in our lives, especially in our journeys, in our offices. But right now, this is a time for the Church of God of Prophecy. I think this is one of the best times to be alive and to witness not just the growth, not just to the season that is in, but see people who care about people, who are believing God for not just a greater move, but who have come with a vision because they sought God. And the national bishop just keeps on again and again and again and again, proving why he was selected by God to be where he's at. And yeah, everyone say, oh, well, that was a vote and whatever the case may be. But I said, well, people could change their minds, like I remember when you would go down and election time would happen and you have to go and vote and put your vote in. And one of the things that people always remember, or come to some sort of consciousness about, is like when they get there to cast their ballot, to actually vote. They could wear that hat, they could wear the clothes, they can wear whatever they want to wear. But when they get behind to write down the name or the sign and put their X in whatever spot they're going to put their X in, no one is there to see that other than them and God. And the people who got to review that later on. So at the end of the day, if they had a change of heart in that one moment or conscious decision that poured out on them, that would happen right then and there. And I'm saying that if we trust God and we believe God that he will guide us and direct our paths, then we have to give him that as well. We have to give him that one portion of our relationship with him where we say, God, this is for you to get the glory ultimately. So we really want you to really guide our hands as we're making these choices, because you've given us life and you're the source of our life. And so God, we want to make sure that our steps are in honor of you and honoring everything that you've given us. And in that process alone, I believe, I fully still committed to that, regardless of what systems were in place before, regardless of what systems are coming in, regardless of how whatever we think it is, and whatever we want to call it, whether it's a form of this, a form of that, at the end of the day, is still going to lead back to God. Because if these are people who care about people and people who generally have a heart for building relationships with people, it's all going to come right back to God. And so that's my ultimate encouragement for every time we have conversations like that, so that people don't lose hope, they don't lose faith, and they're not guided by their personal feelings towards people, but they're guided by just the foundational principles that they grew up with. And that alone, if they hold true to that to the end, I'm telling you, not only would there be prosperity in dry seasons, there would be deliverance, no matter what the season would be. And I believe right now it's like a revival in a way. It's like a fire has caught and it's been lit. And I'm just so happy to see, happy to see a Charles in the mix. And I know it sounds crazy, but he's not the only one. And, you have Finley, you have Adams. There's so many of them that I know or knew, and just know how God has just been shifting so many hearts. And we just got to give God glory and give God honor and praise, because ultimately, when you look at it, when God does a move, when God said yes, ultimately God you just got to move when God says move, and you just got to trust him all the way, and believe God that he is not doing this, that it would be like it's supposed to be painful for you, but it's like one of the messages I was taught during the convention, during the day sessions. And I believe that I recall that firmly, where it's like, and you have to go through suffering. And a lot of people have been through some deep suffering to get where they are. And you wonder why they've gone through the things that they've gone through. Some people might not have gone through that level of suffering, but they've endured those tireless nights where they had to seek and read these books for hours and hours until they got it. They've had to sweat so hard just to pass certain exams that were the most hardest exams to pass. They've had to push themselves to think in ways that their generation for maybe 1,000 generations have never thought. They've committed and built legacies that were never built in their lifetimes before them. And so just to understand that the trades and the suffering doesn't always shine the same way, just because yours was bleeding, this one was scars, this one could be sweating, this one could just be bodily pain, this one just could be mental pain or mental strain and anxiety, this one could be heartache, so much stuff, or loss. And just once you experience all the above, but my testimony tonight was watching all that and saying, God, you are faithful. You're faithful. You remembered Abraham, you remembered Lot, you remembered Job, you remembered Joseph, and you remember us. And so many others. And now is the time to just remain true, remain faithful, remain just, remain respectful and honorable. And I really give glory to God because, like I said, one of the things I appreciate is that when you have people who care about people that are in a position of leadership, and it's good to not only glean from them, learn from them, but also understand the vision, because now you have people who are of wisdom, that have vision, that have guidance, that have experience and have success that they have built, so that's a time when you could sit in a room and learn from them, because everyone has a different season. But the number one thing that the generations prior to us, way back in the day, before Melchizedek and all those other guys, and before Abraham, the number one thing they did was that they communicated and they shared information orally. There was a level of communication that was passed down for generations, so the wisdom never died. So the foundational principles that they needed to stand on to keep them firm, to know how to till the soil, how to bring about crops, successful crops, where to build, where to dig for a well, knowing those differences and stuff like that, and doing the best that you can do in those time periods. These were not people who did not have knowledge. You think digging a well is a very sophisticated thing to put together, because they didn't have backhoes back then. So how was they digging wells? So think about the abilities people had back then, and just the skill set to pass that information on for generation, and the fact that some of those wells that were built back then still are around to this very day, which is insane. And that just goes to show you that level of knowledge and orally shared knowledge, how it was passed down, how it affected lives, how it built communities. This is what you have to get in. And so when you get in a conversation with a person, or you learn from them, or, sometimes you're looking at the glory on the pulpit, but sometimes it's good to be invited in the room and you get to ask questions, because that's when you learn about it. And then you get to maybe understand different perspectives that you might have gotten wrong. And a lot of people are like, King, you sound like you're changing your talk now, like, or whatever the case may be. And it's not that. It's just that when you've come into a place of wisdom, it's one thing to speculate. It's one thing to share your opinions on subjects. It's one thing to challenge believers, challenge young people, push for growth and stuff like that. And then it's another thing to share things that will come back and bite you, man. I talk a lot of things in this podcast, and one of the things you're going to get from me, you're going to get the truth. And I'm trying my best to never make a practice of beating around the bush, but just telling you straight up why I'm here and what the purpose of all of this is for. And all of this is trying to expand our horizons, making us rise up in the morning, looking at the fact that we have a beautiful sunrise when we get up. Knowing the fact that, yes, we do have to get up and work, but this is a part of the life journey. And that's what we pass on. We pass on that integrity and that purpose to everyone that's journeying with us, and letting them know this is the walk of life. Not saying that you cannot dream, not saying that you cannot imagine, but it's saying that what do you do with that dream? And when you imagine, if it's a possibility, and maybe it's coming back to you again and again for you to try to make that happen. And not those persons who believe they could fly now. Don't be jumping off no house talking about you can fly. But maybe go and build a plane. Maybe it's teaching you that. It's just so many things about books and reading them and understanding more about why we do what we do. But I'm really proud of my brother. I'm hoping the Lord would keep on strengthening him and the Church of West End, church, strengthening all of Freeport and all the churches, all the pastors who've been anointed and appointed in their leadership roles and prospective places. Just seeking God and asking God to keep on doing exceedingly abundantly and above all that we could possibly ask or think. Also, even to that effect, just asking good Lord to continue to cover senior pastor and associate pastor and Great Harbor Key and families and emeritus pastor Roberts. So we just asking God to take hold and lead the charge in everything, and we know that God is going to do his wondrous work. And we just know that if anything, when you look at the season that we're in right now, this is time not only to just stand firm, but I just had to really commit. I'm not talking about all this other stuff with like ministers and all that other stuff. I'm talking about like just committing to just the inner voice. You can hear the voice within saying like, there's never been more of a time than now to share the gospel and to live for him. We hear about the wars in Ukraine. We hear about the stuff that's going on, what economy is destabilization that's happening. We hear about the trickery in policies and the trickery in how funds are being funded from policies to implement ideas and implement legislation that promotes things that do not represent any nation that claims to be under God and following God's idea of what a civilization should be like. And we realize that the same formation that was used to propel a church back in the day is now a platform and same source and same strategy that's being used to propel the world. And now, getting back to those roots and that foundation means that all of us need to tap into the source and really have to listen to the inner voice. And when the inner voice tells us to move, we need to move. When the inner voice tells us to stay in line, we need to stay in line, line up and remain in alignment and be faithful. Joseph had to been faithful. He had to been a faithful prisoner for as long as he could possibly think. That was his prison. That's where he was for all those years. He didn't bother escaping. He didn't complain about being locked up every single day. He was faithful to whatever that task was. And he lived out a lifetime in prison before being released. So God if I was able to revive that and say that is possible, and people who saying, oh, we're not really saying that today. Yes, you are. You're seeing persons who come out of death row who've turned into a professor or a lecturer at Harvard. And I said that before, but this has happened. So we've seen the promise manifest again and again and again, or come to life again and again. I don't like to say manifest, because every time I hear about manifest, I always think about demons, as something demonic, because a lot of demonic things are attached to manifestations, so I always be very peculiar the way I use that and when I use that, because something that manifests means its head is showing, it's coming to life, it's showing up, So, I always want it not to be something demonic, but really want it to be God. So I'm very careful if even songs that we use for worship, and we're very careful on how we use those songs. So to God be the glory. Congratulations to my brother. And this week, this Tuesday, I released my book. So tomorrow I'm releasing my book, my new book. You're gonna hear about it. You're gonna see it. I'm gonna post it up. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the book, and I hope it's a book that touch persons. Presents an argument, not the kind of argument that causes people to lose faith or to lose hope in God, but to remind us not to put our trust into systems, but to use the systems as tools to help us all to be able to fully tap in and embrace who we are as originals according to God's design, and not as metaphors or similes or explanation points in some puzzle. Because we always keep on looking at life as a puzzle, and I honestly look at each part of us. We're all a part of the code. God created a code. We're all a part of his code. He created the DNA. We're all a part of his DNA. And which means that source that lives in all of us is we're all equal in being able to tap into that source. And people who tap into it for evil, they can do massive of damage when they tap in it for evil. People who tap in it for good, they can do massive good. So imagine that. Hitler, when he tapped into it, and he did massive evil, merely slaughtered generations. He didn't merely, he slaughtered generations. I mean, and basically cost his nation generations. It's insane. I was like one of the biggest resets, outside of Stalin, but we're living in a time period whereas we're seeing that play out again, whereas rumors of wars are turning into wars, but these are natured to create about one war that ultimately causes a reset, to push a one order move, to push a one move in soul rulership, and people of faith do have to stand. And I believe my book would kind of point us in the right direction. And I really would like to hear thoughts on persons who would read the book and stuff. That it's not a long book to read, 37 pages. I mean, really, if I had to print it, it would be 37 pages, but in a flowable, it's probably more than that. But it's only 8 chapters, not that long of chapters to read, but I think I put enough detail in there to get my point across in describing the arguments I'm presenting. And I'm using what's out there for each individual when they read it to take a point of where they are and how much they know God and what they do actually know about their Bible. And for people to not take an approach to be like, oh, this is fiction, or something like that, but to take an approach to be like, you know what, how does this apply to my relationship with God? Or how does this apply to me and where I'm at, and what I'm willing to admit about what I've trusted more. And this is why I love my show. The Love and Worship show is about that, addressing that, things that we really love and we focus on so much, and the things we really worship, that we put it before who we are, and what I always say is like, bring back to humanity. Humanity is what keeps us grounded. And I really believe that humanity in itself, that key in humanity, has a code in it that allows us to also means that we need to do what we have to do in order to protect it, guard it, and sustain it in the right way, or else not only be gone astray, that we end up starting to manipulate humanity, and we've been starting to do that for many years now. But I'm saying, like, when we get to the point where it's been so manipulated that now can we no longer know where we come from, what we were before all of this manipulation. And so, which allows there to be even more so corruption, more manipulation, and more division. So now you're become a label, you know. There's no longer a human race. You're just a label. And this is where we need to truly break off from that, and really get back to that. And it's not about a common sense rule. It's really about a love and a passion and compassion for people. And God is good. My heart melted tonight. Watched my brother got appointed and then walked outside. Or actually, before I walked outside, reintroduced to my nieces and my nephew. And then I nearly came to tears seeing my younger brother's kids. You just gotta ask God to do what He can do. I still don't know who's going to be in our family that's going to do it, on those other terms that I've prayed about for our family. But I know I feel the burden, and it's heavy. It's the heaviest burden I've ever felt in my life. And tonight, that burden increased tremendously. So I know I got to push that album out. I got to get a couple other projects done. But I think what God is asking me to do right now is release these 3 books that I got left to release this year, and leave that for whichever generation that's gonna claim to them and learn from those books. But I just wanted to drop here this Monday, just saying that God is good, and I've seen a lot, and you can't pay for what happened today. No amount of money in the world could bring that sort of joy and peace and wonder. Today just shows how much God is a wonder. And yeah, I love my brother Ivan. I love his family, Charo. I love my sister-in-law. I love my nieces, my nephew. I love my brothers who couldn't make it, and my sister who couldn't make it. But my kid brother sent his. I keep on calling him kid brother, but he's not kid brother. He's basically. Sometimes I feel like he's older than me sometimes, but seeing them tonight, it just sealed it for me. It sealed it for me because it just made me think on. It just made me think on how good God is. His goodness, His kindness, His grace, His mercies, His understanding, His peace. It just gave me an extra push that I didn't realize I had. So I'm gonna, one of the things I said in 2023, once I said yes to God, I said I wasn't gonna look back and try to recreate the wheel. I was just gonna do what God asked me to do, and that's exactly what I've been doing. And so my encouragement to you, whoever is listening to this, at the sound of my voice, is that God asks you to do something. Um, Remain in alignment to that. Fully commit to that. And sometimes you will get discouraged. Sometimes all of the resources won't magically show up when you think you're going to show up and how they're going to show up. But sometimes he gives you opportunities for breaks. Journeying with my parents, they haven't done anything like that in so long ago, and we're just reminded that he won't leave us nor forsake us. So we just got to we got to give him all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise. And he is exceptionally good. And his peace and mercy endures throughout all generations. And I am so proud of my parents. I am so grateful for them. And man, I don't know when we can do it. But I know we're supposed to honor my dad at the church in November. So I'm hoping that was going to get kicked off, and hopefully that would follow through. But just wanted to remember all of the people that contributed to where Ivan's at, all the people who contributed to my family and everything. I'm just grateful to the ones whose generations are left. I can hear and listen to this. And my prayer is that we will all either meet up, or we'll all end up getting in alignment and coming to understand what it means to remain in alignment. But I guess my biggest encouragement outside of this is that, yes, we can still have beautiful movements where we can say it was a beautiful night, a beautiful day, and an amazing experience. I rarely do anything like this and talk in such a way, but I felt the blessings of the Lord. I felt the goodness, and I felt more than just being at home. I felt a peace, like a still small voice tap me on my right shoulder and say, "It's going to be all right." And that made all the difference, because we get titles, but we're still going through. We get mantles, and we're still going through. We get gifts, but we're still going through. We gain wisdom, but we still have to live. We still have to walk. So it's not an easy road. But my goodness, do we have moments worth celebrating, worth remembering? And this historic moment, I'm grateful that God allowed me to see it. God allowed me to be here and experience it. So to his glory, to his name be praised and honored. And I hope you get a copy of my book. I'm going to release it on my media platforms and probably post it up on here on YouTube. So don't want to give nothing away right now, but look forward to promoting it on Tuesday. And thank you so much to all of you, to my folks, my community, Great Harbor Key, Barry Islands. If you're listening to it, you're from Great Harbor Key and Barry Islands, working your heart out, pushing. I'm going to tell you one thing. God understands. He understands. Yes, I'm hard on my youths when I can be, but one of the things I will always know in my heart is my love for my youths because I believe in every single one of them. But I also believe in my community and the people in my community that whatever we, if we come together purely to succeed and make an exception, a successful succession, it will be that. And we don't have to worry about that. We could just dive into it. We could be sure that God would be on our side and He would be with us and not and not make us feel as if we have to trade. Because when you are called and He, you know, He loves you, you're gonna show up. You're gonna go to that place where you know that place represents or has some sort of connection to Him. You're gonna connect to those people who has that connection to Him. And that's not always the hardest thing to do because sometimes you always feel as if there's a barrier of a dislike or a relationship that might not follow through, or we have our wants and our needs. But sometimes it's just good to just be in a room, to gain that fellowship, to be in a safe place where you would not be condemned. But if your judge is a judgment of critique to propel you, not a judgment of a critique to hurt you. If you're corrected, it's not a correction to condemn you to hell or to hurt you and give you a scar, but it's a correction to protect you from hurt and protect you from scars. And most of the times, it should be a word that pushes you deeper and knowing the God within you who made you and the reason why you are the way you are. And and always understanding that the beautiful moments that you gain every single day when you wake up and you have one of those moments where it's like, wow, whoa, that moment was beautiful. Oh, that was such a good moment. Oh, I laughed. I had so much fun. Cherish those. Just to remind you to cherish those. Because those little joys and those steps, hold on to those tightly so that when you're in doubt, when you're discouraged, when you're frustrated, those are the moments that you put your mind on so that you can get through it. It was when the blisters are messing with your foot and your lips are cracking up and your legs ashy because of the cold. Just remember those good moments when you're out in the sun and on the beach and with family and having this nice cookout and listening to hopefully gospel music. But blessings to all of you. Thank you for dropping by and listening to the show this podcast week. We meet back here for sure. I'm going to be talking about my book, but I'm contemplating doing more shows on a constant basis. So meet me back here. Once the comments start coming in and I hear more feedback on the book and the show, we're just going to keep on growing. And I might be starting from scratch, but we'll see how this keeps on going. But we're hoping that however the Lord leads, it'll lead. It'll be a good show. But so much more we want to talk about because we had astronauts coming from outer space and being returned home. And that was like a big ordeal. We had Tesla vehicles getting blown up in companies. And then next thing you know, Tesla, the company of Tesla, is earning so many Teslas being sold and sold out that is like USA can't even keep up of how many Teslas were being sold. So it didn't really work out for whatever the strategy was. And so sometimes there's an attack to assassinate some purpose in your life. And I didn't want to really use Elon Musk or Tesla or whatever the case may be, the same bias to that. I'm using that as an example to say sometimes someone might try to assassinate your blessings and saying you have too much when Your blessings and what God has for you is not decided by someone who says you have too much. It's not decided by someone who says you have too much. What belongs to you belongs to you. And whatever God said is yours will be yours. Um, and just be guided by that truth and stand firm in it, and continue to be a blessing to others. Make it your life's mission to continue to be a blessing to others. I wish I could have, well, not wish I could have, but I know someday I will be able to be in a better position where not only I could help people, but create a foundation that is set up to not only just help people, but help them build their futures financially stronger, help them to manage what they're being given, and also protect senior citizens from fraudsters. There's so much stuff going on right now with cell phones, people sending you text messages about your Scotia bank account. They're sending you WhatsApp messages. They're sending you emails. They're doing so much stuff that's out there, and a lot of the baby boomers and other mature seniors and retirees now are being faced with this at a larger scale, and we really need to do a better job in protecting them and making sure that they're protected. And not only that, they're protected from being abused, because some of them might not have children, or might be living on their own, and you don't know who's breaking into their homes or harassing them and taking their NIB funding, and how that's working out, or who's targeting them or saying, hey, I'm going to protect you. So it's a lot of things, whereas in our communities, we have to think about this rationally. In the Bahamas as a global thing, that we need to really create a facility to guard and protect our senior citizens and people that we care about, because they're the ones that helped us, and the families who are able to be there and they can't afford to do it, there needs to be not necessarily a home, because everyone knows some random home that's not like a resort. See, a home for people who have contributed, into our communities need to be given something that looks like a resort, that needs to be like a resort for them, where they're catered to constantly on a daily basis. And the organization needs to do a really good job of making sure that people are not hired there just to make money. People are not hired there to abuse seniors. People are not put there to talk bad to seniors. People are not there to rip off the seniors, but really protect them, and really be a facility that sets the bar so high that the environment seems gated. And I mean, it would be a gated environment, but just really a lovely environment, and that people around the world would want to come here to the Bahamas and be willing to retire in that community, and even sows resources in that community. Because right now you have a large population in the next 3 years that's going to be retiring, and a lot of them might go on yearly cruises or something like that, their world tour for like 2 years or whatever after they leave those things. But what next? What would be next for them? And I thought about that, saying that we have people right in my community are thinking about stuff like this, and I just hope that my sister Carrie, that she will, God will bless her, that someone would help her to build this. And if I'm able to get those resources to help her to build this, I'll do that in a heartbeat, because I believe it's needed. I believe it's not only needed, but needed something that's globally needed, globally wanted. I don't believe a government should do it. I don't believe it should be anything attached to a government, because I don't think it will be successful. I think it needs to be something that needs to be private, that's not attached to the government, and that needs to be started by a community citizen, and not, you know, and if it's going to be foreignly invested into, it needs to be 60% Bahamian, 40% foreign investment. And just to kind of just make sure that generational wealth is protected for persons who live in the Bahamas versus and also protecting those families, because that's a lot of families, and that's a lot of wealth. That's a lot of people in one place. A lot of people who could possibly have health issues, and you still got to have a doctor on call. You still got to have a nurse on call or a nurse presence. You still got to have a counselor or something like that, and you still got to have like a manager of the house that's always there and present, and someone who cares about people. And then you still got to get proper training from people who've done it successfully abroad and knows that environment and that playing field, and know the skill level that's required in order to operate in that. And just having people who are part of the organizations who have love for people, and having donors who care about an organization like that, that would see the prosperity expand. And it never becomes an organization that is used to hide money, or organization that's used to make people rich, but it's an organization that's just used to care for our senior citizens and people and retirees. So, and I tell you one thing: you build it, everybody will come. Everybody will come, because you won't be able to take everybody, but everybody will want to. That's where they want to go, and do it properly, and just make sure their assets are always protected. But to God be the glory. It's not about that. I got a little drifted off. My book, remember my book, and once again, I'm just grateful for what God did. My brothers did this weekend was about Him, my family, and I try to stay really focused about that. So thank God so much for what He's done. Blessings upon blessings. Guys, we'll meet back here next week. Or if we come back before that, then that means I'm popping in shows like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we'll see about how that goes. But until then, grace, peace, and love. This was Love and Worship by your host, Kingsley Kase. See you once more again.
Yeah.